when you are a leader, it is bad manners not to gonya people when you meet them, to leave them with something when you meet them? Or can we shift this conversation to discussing issues, the individual problems that they go to leaders to solve? My wife has been locked up at the maternity facility. My son is at home for lack of school fees. We do not have the next meal. They need to understand that these so-called personal level problems collectively are our challenges. That we are food insecure. We do not have a proper healthcare system. We do not have a good education system, and we do not have capacity to be able to provide services and goods to all of us in an equitable manner. And therefore, they need to make it an election agenda so that leaders can be grilled and held accountable after elections on these promises that they make about improving the quality of life for the people.
Yeah, but Deuri, is our problem a lack of perpetuity of vision? We all agree that we have this Vision 2030 coming through, but the previous administration, which the current leader was part of, had the Big Four agenda. That was not achieved, it was shelved. Now we're talking bottom up. Is the problem a lack of perpetuity of vision? We don't have that focus, that this is what we're doing as a country, this is the direction we're going to. Therefore, it is like a baton. You hand a baton to the next person to reach that shared vision.
Well, I think that's entirely true. The political parties which are supposed to be driven by ideology are a mirage in the political parties. And that would be the first place where you would expect that there will be vision. I usually find it extremely amusing when we talk of bipartisan discussions. Because how do you have bipartisan discussions between political parties that are devoid of any ideologies? In a true context, when you're having bipartisan discussions, you will find that the predominant value of one political party is that perhaps they are socialist in nature. They would want to take measures that protect the large majority of the poor, are reasonable in their means of taxation. And you may find that the other party is largely capitalistic in nature in terms of their ideologies, and so they favor big business and enterprises. And so when you are having then bipartisan discussion, you are trying to bridge the ideologies of this party and the other ideologies of this party, because they think in completely radical different ideological positions. And you're trying to find a consensus. Trying to find how can you bring down those incentives for big business and bring up the incentives for the large majority, so that you're meeting somewhere where you're developing consensus. So that's a unique, what Dr. here was talking about, this quest for primitive accumulation of wealth.
To beat the diseases, and COVID-19 really exposed us on how we need to be better prepared to handle pandemics or even the health system. We have to better the infrastructure. The northern corridor, you cannot compare the health system there as you can compare it in urban centers. Kindly mention that.
Okay, I think one thing we need to appreciate is the journey we have taken with this issue of fighting disease. If you look at when we turned 40 as a country, we had President Kibaki as the head of state. And I think his administration was more in focus on making healthcare accessible, in the sense that it was readily available. Wherever you would want to find it, you would easily find it. There was a lot of preventative care, meaning that people would not get sick as often as we see right now, and therefore they would not need to spend a great deal of time or resources in accessing healthcare. But when we turned 50 and then we devolved healthcare to the counties, it's as if that focus on preventative healthcare failed. And I think where health care has succeeded in terms of being accessible is where governments have been able to focus more on prevention. If you go to Cuba and some of the socialist states in the world, they focus more on preventative, meaning you prevent that person from getting sick, and therefore you spend less in terms of managing healthcare. If as a country we decided that a certain percentage of our focus on prevention, then probably we would spend less. But as a country that spends a great deal of time in planning for corruption, then definitely we have to wait for people to get sick. Then we can plan with the mobile clinics when we turn 50. We just finished with the KEMSA scandal. As we turn 60, can we now change the narrative? Can we focus not more on reactive and interventions on healthcare, but more on preventative measures that can reduce more Kenyans seeking healthcare? And I'm excited with the affordable housing, because one thing it does, it provides decent housing, but also reduces some of the diseases that come about from informal settlements. The other thing I'm also happy is that we are talking about subsidizing production. Most of the diseases in the rural areas are because of hunger or lack of quality food. So if you're able to address food security, provide decent housing, which also comes with other amenities like clean water, good roads for those who are accessing those houses, then we'll find some of these diseases that come about because of our lack of planning will not be there. So I think as we turn 60, can we now rejig how we plan our health? Not just in the sense of providing medicine and equipment, medical equipment, but more on preventing people from getting sick. And what are those things that we can do that can make people live a healthier life, so that more of us don't go to hospital? During COVID times is that many people didn't go to hospital. And one person told me that he sells coffins, and he told me a lot of people we sold coffins were COVID-related people, but not people who went to hospital and got sick and died. Meaning there's a relation between how we manage our health and how people die. I think we put a lot of money in medicine and equipment and infrastructure and don't put a lot of money on our health workers who would help us in preventing some of the diseases that we face. If we can put more money on our people, on our health workers, prevent people from getting sick, put more money on quality food production or productivity of food, put more money on decent housing, put more money on roads, on quality water, probably that would help us in managing how we handle our health as a sector.
Indeed. And Nelson, looking at the 60 years, a lot has happened. We did fight for independence and a lot of Kenyans died there. Then from there, we gained the internal self-rule. Then in the 1992, we also have, we also had in 1992 multipartyism and 2010 constitution. I would like you to touch on matters governance, but as you can see on your screen right now, the governor of county number 14, Cecily Mutito Mbarire, and a host of other county leadership are already streaming in. As you can see, also dignitaries from very, very many dignitaries have already, including ambassadors and envoys, are already in the Embu Stadium, when we are expecting the head of state and other senior government officials any moment from now. And remember, the keynote address by the head of state is something that Kenyans are really waiting for in light of so many things that are happening in the country. Nelson, kindly touch on governance that we've had. We've made some strides.
Yes, we've made significant strides. By the promulgation of the new constitution, it moves us from the old dark days where only pro-government voices were heard. Today we have the new constitution, which allows everybody to speak willingly and freely. It is a plus for us. It's a very major step. There are so many countries in the world, especially Africa, which are still under expression. So Kenya should be proud. On this day of Madaraka, there should be a reason for celebration. Governance has come a long way. Today, at least, we are sure once you're a president, you can't do more than 2 terms. We are sure about that. Unlike the previous time when you have a president running for the longest time. And you know, countries, some of our neighbors, they are taking more than, I mean, a friend was telling me there's no former president in some countries. There's only one president and there's no former. So we are happy about our transition. And we really thank the Kenyans for voting for the new constitution. You can see, for instance, the previous election for 2022, those are very smooth transition. It is very far from what was happening before. The new law that came in after 2010 has given Kenyans a chance to think about other things apart from politics. But there is still much that has to be done. For instance, if, my friend engineer here is talking on Daktari, healthcare, where today there are some areas not accessible for Kenyans, it's very unfortunate.
They're 60 years down the line. 60
years down the line, it's very unfortunate. Countries like South Korea, probably Singapore, which were on the same page with us in 1960s or 50s, they are very different today. They are very much ahead of us. Not because they are smarter than us. In fact, it's clear that some of them borrowed our policies of development to where they are today. But they have gone ahead of us. I think we have mismatched priorities as a country. We have misplaced priorities because, like the engineer is saying, we focus more on healing or curative services rather than preventive services. It is dangerous because now that gives a very high cost of healthcare. It's very costly. When you prevent, it's cheaper than when you cure. And they say, kuzuia ni afadhali kuliko kutibu. And that is something we must really adopt as Kenyans. So governance-wise, we have made steps. But we should not be very happy. We should not remain on the celebration table because there is so much that it has to be done. There are Kenyans suffering from poverty. You had people dying of hunger, drought. At the same time, the same country, people are dying of floods. It makes no sense to somebody who is out of this country says Kenyans are dying of drought. At the same time, they are dying of floods. So somebody wonders which country is this having same problems that has a solution. One problem is a solution to the other. So we must also acknowledge and embrace innovation. There are so many Kenyans who have come up with very good ideas. If we have embraced them, we are going to have a very significant change in our development. So this Madaraka Day, the 60th Madaraka Day, we must decide deliberately to change our priorities. Because if we do not, 10 years from now, we shall be celebrating the same thing under the same conditions. I want to be on this table next time when I see Daktari saying, now in my village, we can access healthcare. That's what we want to hear. Because if we provide ambulance and there's no road, then there's no purpose for the ambulance. In my county, where I come from, there has been very many development steps, but the roads have improved, I would say, from where I sit. So devolution has worked. Devolution has worked for all Kenyans. I would think so, but the northern corridor of Kenya, the northern counties, haven't been given attention. And I think the government must deliberately decide to make this. It's very sad. A few weeks ago, I was visiting some of the counties, and we were told, people were asking, did you have elections? It was about 3 weeks ago, they were saying, who is the president of Kenya? I was so disturbed to wonder why would somebody from some part of the same country say they don't know what's happening. A newspaper reaches them after a week. You know? Yeah. That is very dangerous. Because
and the fear of crisis there is something else. And I think Doc, you're laughing because you know some of what he's saying is true.
Exactly.
And still on the same, I would like you to touch on the democracy that we've had. Indeed, we fought for independence and we got it. Then we fought for multipartyism and we got it. Then we fought for a new constitution, now we have it. Picking from what Nelson has talked about, we are guaranteed that there is no president who will do more than 2 terms. Looking at the first regime and the second regime, we had them do more than 10 years, with the second president of Kenya having 24 years. But now we are guaranteed because we have our own constitution. Not only do we have our own country, we have our own constitution. But as he has said, the sharing of the national cake, he feels that we are yet to get there, and mentioning some of the counties from one of them that you hail from.
I'd like to first say one thing in terms of the uniqueness of our nation. Kenya is the only country where you have experts unemployed within the country, but you source them from outside.
And you have them.
You have them here, and pay triple of what you would have paid your own experts in the country. I'm
Case
talking
in
about
point, the Cuban doctors?
The Cuban doctors.
Yes.
So Kenya is unique. Secondly, Kenya is the only nation where the system is established, but people will not want to leave the system freely to function. They will still hold on it. What are these systems I'm talking about? Now I'm going into the games and things that have caused a lot of difficulties for people who will want to expel, on independence, but again, they are not intentionally feeling to leave systems that have been put in place. For example, we have the IBC, the electoral body. We call it independent, and it's a very nice word. Is always there, but we rarely see that independence in it. Every other time election comes in. Why? Both entities, whoever is competing for any position, will want favor from the institution. And the institution's leadership is compromised because these are civilians who have been tasked to follow just the law, the constitution that has been established, that established them, so that they are able to deliver with their mandate within that territory. But the challenge is the people who are in control of the systems will want to utilize or misuse them for purposes of self-gain, but not for the purpose of the constitutional gain. So this is one of the things that people are getting a problem in terms of gains. Leaving out or freeing the,
apologies to interject, but as we can see, the neighboring county of Kirinyaga County Governor and Waiguru there also getting in. It more or less seems like now the Kenyan dignitaries have already started streaming in, and she's having a chat there with one of the journalists, and as you can see, some of the big vehicles getting there. We know very well that we are not quite far from the big thing. Apologies for that, Doctor.
That's fine, thank you very much. Now, in terms of gains, you will realize that much of the gains are in papers. We have established systems that indeed, guided by the 2010 Constitution, although this Constitution, much of the previous Constitution was adapted from UK, and then later, when we were developing our Constitution, we adapted from Western countries, particularly America. And that wasn't a good move in terms of reflecting on the real life of Kenyans and putting their own laws, and that's why we are struggling with some of the laws that, or the laws that have been developed during that time.
Chief of Defense Forces also, Ogola, has just arrived. That more or less signifies that the head of state is not quite far, being the commander-in-chief, now that his CDF has already arrived at the Embu Stadium. We are expecting the president and also the CSs. We haven't seen any CS yet, but we're expecting them to start streaming in any moment from now. Doc?
I just saw Murkomen coming in,
Murkomen,
so
yes.
You must have missed that.
Yes.
But you're going to look for it.
Okay.
I think one thing that we need to reflect on in terms of the gain versus the reality is that, one, we must be proud of our peaceful dispensation of our leader governance in our country. When you go to neighboring countries, even after independence, you see there's quite a number of crises, either coups or even, you know, there's no freedom. As our colleague here mentioned, you'll realize there's a lot of difference between Kenya and the neighboring countries or even Africa. When you go there, that's the time you'll appreciate Kenya is indeed in advanced stages. And when you look at Kenya from the perspective of where we are, we want more, while others are still scrolling. Still, they have not actually realized basic things that 21st century people will have seen it. So That is one. Secondly, you know, we are able to, you know, develop institutions that are independent. Mm-hmm. These institutions were anchored in our constitution. And the fact that we have those institutions there with all the knee-jerk problems or all the other issues, it's a very good indication that Kenya is heading towards, you know, democratic freedom. Thirdly, you see our medias. Mm-hmm. You don't forget media. We are able to come out and express our concerns freely, without fear. And I know there are countries where you cannot even open your mouth, even if you are a leader. Forget about ordinary elites within the country who will have contributed to the development of the nation, but even the leaders who have been elected have no freedom to come to a media and express concerns or even talk about good things unless you praise an individual who is in power. And praising an individual is not governance. That is dictatorship. And dictatorship will not take any country anywhere. But we have one challenge that I see is not also getting out of our nation. Tribalism. We associate ourselves with tribes. 21st century, still talking about, I belong to this tribe. This guy who has been given this position belongs to this tribe. A case in a point is recently the DPP, Nuruddin Haji, who has been given a position at NIS as Director General. I mean, when you look at Kenyans speaking, I know those are naive. It's not about all Kenyans. But, you know, these are people whom you think they have a place in the society. And when they speak out, you want to gain a lot from them. But our young people are looking at this particular person, talking about tribe and issues of leadership or appointments. I think that way it will be, that's the thing that we are not getting out of it. And the moment we continuously talk about tribe, you remember President Barack Obama, when he came here, he said a nation that is built on tribalism is doomed to fail. I mean, nations that are anchored on tribes will not get anywhere because tribalism is a disease. And that is where most of the African countries are collapsing, because they think certain groups or formation they belong to as a tribe or as a kinsman must have certain priority over the other ones, and that will not take us very far. And my wish at the age of 60 as our nation is that I think I want to see a Kenya where each and every person is a Kenyan by brand. And each and every person gets positions based on the performance or qualification than based on tribe or personal issues. But regionalization is okay, because you need to balance as a nation. When you come from different regions, I mean, we have counties now. I mean, balancing employment or appointment regionally is a logical thing. But on tribal line, you could have 10 people who are from the same region, maybe, for example, where we're having the event in Embu, who are able to deliver better than any other people in the county, in other counties. And if they are the ones who are able to deliver that, then we should use them, because the end result is service delivery.
Okay. Engineer, if you ask me, after we gained independence and self-rule in 1963, we've also gotten more freedom when we started out multipartyism in 1992. And even some Kenyans lost their lives fighting for that. And after that, we also have the freedom of our own constitution. I would like you to touch on the governance, that the steps that we've made, the freedom that we have made and we have now, because of how we have been able to conduct our governance issues.
Well, freedom we have. I think the question we need to ask ourselves, what have we used it for? How has it made our lives better by exercising that?
Speaker of the Senate, apologies, the Speaker of the Senate has just also streamed in, as you can see, Emerson Jeff Kingi there, being escorted and also being welcomed by some of Defense Forces officers there. Let's first of all listen in. We have some interview with, yes indeed, let's listen in.
wakati tunasherehekea sikukuu ya Madaraka hivi leo, ni siku muhimu sana kwa taifa letu la Kenya, manake linaleta kumbukumbu ambapo wale ambao walijitolea kwa hamu na gamu kupigana na mbeberu ili kuona kwamba Kenya imekuwa huru na tumepata madaraka ya kujitawala wenyewe. Kwa hivyo ni siku muhimu na ni siku ambayo Kenya lazima wajivunie na wajikumbushe mengi ya kwamba tulipotoka ni kubaya, tulikuwa tuko katika minyororo ya mabeberu na ya kufurahikia kama Wakenya, na pia ni siku ya Wakenya kuweka vichwa pamoja na kuanza kujiuliza baada ya miaka hii yote ya kupata uhuru wa kujitawala, ni yapi ambayo tumeweza kuyatekeleza sisi wenyewe kama Waafrika weusi, sisi wenyewe kama Wakenya, baada ya kumfurusha mzungu, baada ya kumfurusha Mwingereza, ni yapi sisi wenyewe ambao pia tumeweza kuyatekeleza. Kwa hivyo wakati jiuliza, je, safari hii ya kuwa na uwezo na uhuru wa kujitawala nchi hii imeenda mbele kimaendeleo?
Je, kama seneti
mambo ya hela bila shaka ni mambo ambayo yanatekelezwa na executive. Kama seneti, ukiangalia katika katiba yetu ni kwamba seneti jukumu lake kubwa sana ni kutetea na kuhakikisha kwamba haki ya serikali. Miaka hiyo yote 10 na tunaenda 11 sasa, seneti imesimama kidete kutetea haki ya serikali za kaunti, kuona kwamba haihujumiki wakati wanatekeleza majukumu yao. Kwa hivyo kusema kweli ni kwamba kama seneti imetekeleza wajibu wake wa kisheria, wa kikatiba, kuona kwamba serikali za kaunti zimesimama na zimelindwa vilivyo.
Spika wa bunge la seneti humu nchini akizungumzia tu mahali nchi ya Kenya imetoka, umuhimu wa sherehe hizi za Madaraka Day, akisema kwamba ni sherehe muhimu ambazo za jinsi Kenya tulivyoweza kujitoa kwenye mikono ya mbeberu. Amezungumzia hali ilivyo, akasema kwamba ugatuzi kama bunge la seneti imeweza kujaribu kufanya kila ndizo majukumu yale ambayo ni majukumu ya bunge la seneti kuweza kufanya, na amesema kama seneti wameweza kufanya jukumu lao, kwa hivyo yote imesalia katika mikono ya serikali kuu. Baadhi ya viongozi wameshaanza kuingia, kama nilivyokujuza mtazamaji, kwamba hapa itakuwa ni nafasi ama ndio lango kuu ambalo viongozi watakuwa wanatumia kufika katika ukumbi ama katika uwanja huo wa Embu. Na kama ulivyoona hao ni viongozi wameingia. Mwingine aliyeingia hapo awali ni waziri wa kilimo Mithika Linturi, vile vile naibu gavana wa kaunti hii ya Embu Kinywa Mugo, vile vile mbunge wa Kihara Ndindi Nyoro, pamoja na mwenyekiti wa baraza la magavana Anne Waiguru. Na kama unavyoona hilo ni gari la spika. Huyu ni wa bunge la kitaifa, huyu ni spika wa bunge la kitaifa, ndiye anayefika sasa. Dr. Moses Wetangula anaingia, kama unavyoona hilo ni Mia. Tungependa kupata kuzungumza naye, acha tuone kama atazungumza nasi kama wanahabari. Ndo huyu hapa.
Which are the many questions?
So many questions across the country right now, yes. Especially on the role of democracy. You have seen, on democracy, you've seen what the opposition is saying about lack of democracy, a decision that will also be coming to your house soon, and so many other things that yes. are in question. What would you say about where we are as a country today?
At 60, we certainly have come of age. Since independence, we have had regular elections at the level of democracy, with challenges, of course, but we have managed to successfully have now the 5th president. That is a feather in our democratic cap that we should be proud of. What we should focus on is now at 60, what social transformation do we give to our country? How do we get rid of abject poverty in our country, provide clean water, some issues that we have been talking about for the last 60 years. I think now it's time to take a new trajectory, reduce unnecessary and unhelpful arguments in our politics, and focus on how to uplift the lives of our people. That is what this day should signify. Our forefathers fought for independence. They brought independence. We should not betray them by derailing the cause for which they fought. Thank you.
Yet at 60
SMSEs.
Yes.
Exactly. What do you have to say about that? Because they're still complaining.
The world is now going smart economy, and Kenya should not be left behind. So we'll do everything we can to move in that direction.
At 60 years, Mr. Speaker,
yes.
The House you're leading, Parliament, working for the executive, being in bed with the executive. Parliament is still said not to be...
The House is independent of the executive. The House consists of political players. So you have to mix the two. The political players have caucuses outside the House, and they come to the House and vote as individuals and as caucuses. To that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That we are seeing a lot of surgeries at KEMSA. Does it concern you?
My biggest concern is the delivery of health to the people. That is my greatest concern. And anything that would is what will be of concern to us. And our greatest concern is whether health will still remain a lot of efforts by some of the entities in national government to try and claw back on health without necessarily looking like they are doing a clawback. They use other programs like from donor agencies. And of particular interest, one, we have the universal health workers or universal health staff who were employed by the national government when COVID struck, and they had a contract of 3 years which ended this month. Of course, these health workers don't belong to the county, they don't belong to the national government, they belong to the people. And unless those people are given their letters and they come back for a renewal contract of 3 years, health is going to suffer. And of course, there's the issue of the mess, which we are aware at the moment, that the equipment that have been assisting our people for the longest time since this program was consummated, we are now staring at the danger of our people converging back get basic health services like dialysis, CT scan, and so on and so forth. So it is critical that whatever government should take place, which we are not part of, as we just want the services to continue. It doesn't matter whether they will be leased or bought, we just want the services to be there because the public is already used to them. So as we address Madaraka Day today, health must sit on the top list of the things we need to address.
Mheshimiwa Newton Karish, unajua wimbo yake? Unasikia watu wa Embu,
We are now at we are on the last month basically. We are in June. In June, we are supposed to have received all monies except for June. And as it were, the last disbursement you got was of March. So we still have April and May that is still pending. And prudent use of resources, even the Public Act, or rather the Finance Act, states that all the monies for the counties or public entities should be given, or rather should be disbursed before the end of the financial year. So definitely the counties are affected. And you know, it is interesting that at the end of the financial year, you will see reports, and it is these media houses will be running them, about how counties are not performing, how they have not done any development, how they have not used the resources, the Auditor General and the Controller of Budget on the counties. Yet you cannot work without resources, because functions are supposed to be followed by resources. It is those resources or utilization of those resources that shows your performance. If you don't utilize them because you don't have them, then your performance definitely is affected. And that is how we normally brand devolution as failing. It is not failing. It is a treasury, it is the whole economy of Kenya that is failing devolution, not the managers of devolution themselves. Thank you very much.
Take you back to health, and we are seeing a push by medical practitioners, especially KMPDU, to revert health back to the national government for the same reason that you've mentioned, that counties have failed to ensure that we have the best of health services. You're the chair.
I think that move by the KMPDU looks, I would say it is boardroom politics. Boardroom politics. To counties to pay the workers is the same one that is believed to be capable of paying the health workers if they go back of money to pay the same staff when they go back to the national government. And therefore that clamor to take back the health workers to the national government, I think it's a boardroom politics which should not be entertained at all, because that cannot happen unless we go back to the actually under Schedule 4. There's nothing you can change there unless we go for referendum. But of course, you know, sometimes get away with it. But we are aware that our judicial system is alert, and even as we make this appeal, we know that it's just hot air. It cannot happen. Thank you.
Naam, mtazamaji, huyo ni gavana wa Tharaka Nithi Muthomi Njuki, ambaye vile vile ndiye mwenyekiti wa kamati Mezungumzia kwa mapana na marefu kuhusiana na masuala ambayo yanaathiri sekta ya afya humu nchini. Unakumbuka kwamba hivi majuzi kulikuwa na yale mazungumzo yalikuwa yanazungumzia ama yalikuwa yanataja kuhusu afya kuondolewa katika gatuzi na kuletwa ugatuzi katika hali hiyo, na kwamba inafaa sekta hiyo irudishwe katika serikali kuu. Lakini umemsikia hapo alivyozungumza akisema kwamba kama swala ama kama changamoto ni masala ya malipo na fedha zinatoka katika serikali kuu, basi ni vipi itakuwa hali yao itabadilika iwapo watarudishwa katika serikali kuu. La jinsi gatuzi zinavyofanya, akisema madaktari ni muhimu sana katika wananchi, na kwamba ni wajibu wa serikali kuu kuhakikisha kwamba iwapo ni changamoto zinazokumba madaktari, si kwamba inahudumia serikali za kaunti ama kuhudumia serikali kuu, bali
All right, first of all, we do apologize for the technical hitch there. Of course, a lot of traffic when you talk about even technology back there, because Embu is a little bit a small town, if you ask me. But we continue with the live coverage there. You've seen some of the top government officials are already there. We have both speakers in the house now, and also we also have some governors as well. The last one there being the Council of Governors Committee Chair in Matters Health, that is Muthomi Njuki, who is also the governor of the vote-rich county of Tharaka Nithi. And there's something that I've noted about the three, the Mutomi Njoki and the two speakers, they've talked very passionately about devolution. That is another freedom that we gained ourselves after we promulgated and started devolution. Engineer?
Well, I was speaking about the freedoms that we have gained as a country, and I was saying for 40 years we could not speak freely as a nation under the Moi and Kenyatta rule. But what have we done with the freedom we have enjoyed with Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta? We've definitely made some gains. We have a new government system where we have the county government and the national government. We have a more free press. We have a more engaged public that are able to participate in the governance of this country. But also we also have some challenges that this freedom has brought. We had the worst post-election violence in 2007 as a result of these freedoms not being used or exercised responsibly. We have the Shakahola massacre, which is as a result of this freedom to exercise our religion freely. So, and also we have the war on corruption, which have sometimes been lost because of misrepresented facts on the ground. So I think we have both the pros and cons to these freedoms. We just need to take stock of what have we done with the 20 years of freedom and make the next 10, 20 years of this country much better by exercising this freedom more responsibly, by making sure this freedom is able to bring as much economic, political and social impact positively to the people of Kenya, and less in terms of how we look at ourselves as tribes, we look at ourselves as country that is divided. We want to secede. You know, we are talking every time we have an election, people want to secede. All this because of the freedom we have that we are misusing as a country. So therefore we need to be very cautious in terms of how our media carries stories, how we engage in the public, leaders and the common man, and also how religion is governed in this country, because we have seen, we used to look at religious extremism as just confined to Muslims, but Christianity seems to be worse, far more worse than Islam, because yes, we have the Mackenzies of this world who have called people to one isolated land, but we have so many pastors who masquerade to be prophets and deny people to go to seek health services and die in their homes and give that wealth to pastors. So this is something we need to discuss and be very, very careful about. And they are hiding under the clothes of political influence because they bring crowds to politicians. And this is an issue that we need to address as a country. The media needs to be very courageous enough to speak about these issues. The Shakahola massacre, if you look at the media, the way they interrogate things, but nobody is able to have the courage to re-interrogate this. Where did this issue come about? This man started his church in 2003. For 20 years, nobody saw this. He didn't just kill people in the last 3 or 4 months. Probably this whole story started for many years. So we need to be able as a country to be able to interrogate this freedom that we have. Where have we failed as a country? And where have we gained? And how can we best move forward with the gains that we've made from this freedom? Yes.
And Nelson, looking at what our leaders there have talked about, they're talking so passionately about devolution, despite the few hitches here and there and the challenges that devolution has faced in the last almost 10 years now. I would like you to touch on that in matters devolution, how we've been able to carry ourselves. This is one form of freedom, if you ask me.
Yes. Before I comment on that, I want to commend my brother what he said. The freedoms we have misused or not rightfully used. You're in the media. Now we're in the era of fake news. If you see a media house, there are so many other versions of the same media house. And for the ignorant Kenyan, doesn't know the difference. You've seen people behaving as if they are not the real people. You've seen somebody pretending to be the president of Kenya in the last year or something. Somebody masqueraded as the president and was able to get money from somebody. You know? This is freedom as well, we are saying. Coming to devolution, devolution has worked. From where I sit, devolution has worked. Why I would say this is because of the testimony I have from where I come from. Initially, I wouldn't go home with my car. I would have to park in the nearby center. Then I walk home. But today I can drive up to my home. That has worked for me. Over the years when I was young, growing up in Kakamega, I've seen the changes happen. When I hear about people talk about healthcare being a national matter, I feel at times not very happy because this should be devolved. Healthcare, like the friend said, is not about national government or the devolved units because it's everybody's concern. I got an opportunity to stay in other parts of the world apart from Kenya, and I can tell you it is very sad what you see today. In most of the economies that are doing very well, healthcare is a primary thing. It's not something to discuss about whether we should take it where or because mandatory is a responsibility for the government. Devolution has worked, and as you can see, the 47 units, there may be so much devolved services, but there's devolved corruption. Because it has come from national level to devolved units. And I was sitting with a friend of mine who said to me, you know, I used 400 million to campaign to be a governor. Then I was asking myself, how much is the salary of a governor?
Even if we say $1 million every month,
if we say
you cannot make that in the
cannot make it 400 million. So what would the interest of being a governor? Spending 400 million, you can do something different with that money. Not necessarily being a governor. That means there's something hidden that you cannot read in books or write about at home. And I think the Anti-Corruption Commission must now start targeting not only the public scene corruption and start looking at the private individuals, because the elected leaders can only be made corrupt by the private. I do not think that a civil servant will corrupt another civil servant. Most likely there will be a private citizen corrupting a public servant. So devolution has worked, but we have a long way to go. We still have a lot of mistrust within the two units. You can see there's so much delay of funds being released to the county governments. I don't know how that happens. I want to think as a layman why the money has been collected, it's there.
Actually, I do concur because I also report from the courts, and you remember we even went to the Supreme Court because of the division of revenue counties.
Yeah, because
once a certain amount of money, the national government says we can only give this, and not only that, there is delay in disbursement of this money.
So I don't know, when I do a transfer of M-Pesa to you, it comes immediately. If it's an RTGS, the same day. I don't know why it's so difficult for money from the national unit to be sent to devolved units until the governors are now saying, can we go on hold? I was watching the other day the governor for Nyeri saying, look, we are even thinking about telling the workers to not to come, because we can't keep them coming at their resources. There must be something wrong that we are not addressing. Is it the bureaucracy? What is it? Because if the money is there, what is the problem of disbursing the money to the county government? In the worst case scenario, why can't it be then that you collect your money, retain what you can retain, send the rest to the national government? I don't know. I'm thinking as a layman. I'm trying to assume that I'm not going to school.
All right. Doc, I'd like to give you one word in terms of devolution, because you also need to predict the speech that all Kenyans are waiting for, the head of state speech. Because the one guy said that he is really waiting for the president's speech because a number of issues are dogging the country. So I'll give you some moment to reflect on devolution.
Right. I think devolution itself is a game. We must appreciate that. It is totally a game. However, as my brother has put it very well, we have devolved also corruption. Have you heard any of you who is walking around the city or in big towns where people tell you, oh, that flat ni county worker, ni mfanyakazi wa county. Hiyo nyumba ni ya mfanyakazi wa county. I'm wondering, I've worked for the last 27 years. And I could not even get a flat all that time, and I have been earning for the last 15 years 7-digit salary. 7-digit salary, not even anyone
not
else.
Even 6.
Not 6. And yet I could not make such a flat. And therefore, the problem is we are accepting something which is not normal and normalize it for it to be normal. And I don't know how that chain has completely accepted. So one thing we expect from the president is that the 10 years that devolution has been in existence, I guess 10 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the 10 years that devolution has been in existence, we know quite a number of people who have looted county coffers and made significant gain in their wealth. These are things that are alarming. We may not even think of the national government. Perhaps bigger things are happening there, up there. But again, when it is devolved down there, and down there I look at a common person who does not understand anything about devolution, only wants basic services to be given. Basic, very basic. And even sometimes, if I take you to the hospitals in the rural areas, much of the drugs are not there. The drugs which are there are basic, that we buy them with 20 shilling, 10 shilling, 15 shilling. Not drugs we buy them from the pharmacies with 1,000 or 2,000 shilling. That tells you the level of their livelihood and the level of their understanding and what basic thing they need. But if my CEC has built a skyscraper in Nairobi or Eldoret, and yet down there there's nothing, completely nothing going on, means there's a curtail between the governors and the executive that he has put in place, and of course the control of the budget is not exceptional, because that money passes through them, and then of course finally every year you hear the Auditor General reporting cases of malpractices in the resources. But do we take any action? No, we don't. Then who is supposed to take action? EACC was established, and I think they need to take they need to change. So we expect the president to come very firm, the way he has came out when there was a crisis in KEMSA over the Global Fund resources. He should also direct his troops to do lifestyle audit of all people who have gone through the county management or leadership, and understand if the governor is earning give him 2 million. If the governor is earning 2 million every month, will he make 3 billion? No. My county governor has used 1.2 billion or 3 billion, huge amount of money. I was hearing my own constituency where I was in the race, he has used over 150 million. And now I'm just wondering, if as he has put it very well, if your salary is that, how long will it take you to do that? So that means we are opening arenas for corruption and looting of public resources. And on that note, we expect the president to come out firmly on that issues, and he should end this. The other thing we expect the president to tell us about is the issue of taxation. You know, the tax bill. Yes. I think it's something that the president needs to reflect on. Why we have been paying tax, every Kenyan has been paying tax, but Kenyans are crying. I tend to think it is not the right time. And therefore, I think his advisors need to tell him that as much as the brilliant idea he has tabled, and it is something that we must do it, can we do it progressively so that we know when Kenyans recover from the drought and the floods that we had, then we are able to, they are not going to feel the pain, and they are able to say, yes, we can pay this tax. Or can we prorate it across certain duration, so that they are able to bite it slowly, not biting them at once. The other thing that we expect him to tell us is the issue of politicking all through from one election time to the other election time. And on that note, I'm looking at the freedom the Constitution has given us. Are we misusing it, or we are using it as per it is required? For example, you cannot, a leader who has been involved in changing this country's constitution, issues of democracy, and then today, at age of his retirement, he says we want cessation. What is he trying to tell the young generation who is coming up? Is that this country has no control You know, there's nothing that controls or boundaries in terms of
the freedoms
that we have. And I tend to think even America, where this the democracy we have adapted from, don't give you that freedom like that leeway. And therefore, I think there's a bit of misunderstanding of what is free in freedom and what is where the boundaries lies. And once you get where the boundary lies, we are able to guide ourselves. And objectively, people must bring out issues on the table based on facts and not fiction. The other thing is politics is not leadership or governance. Politics is about mobilizing troops so that they vote you in. The moment you are voted in, you are property of that voters, those voters. You are property of Kenyans. We pay your salary based on our tax, and therefore you should provide services, not politicking all through. I think those are areas that I wanted him to look at. Above all, how we're going to open up northern frontier districts where we have now at the age of 60, we still need basic things. For example, water. We still do water tracking during dry seasons, and then we have a lot of flash floods from Ethiopia passing through our villages, and we are not able to harvest that water. And therefore, after every 3-4 months, we will still go the same way that we were during the drought season. People have lost a lot of animals, all their animals, or people have lost a lot of their properties, farms, product. Let him tell us how he will turn around things in order for Kenyans' basic life improve. And the cost of living that we know very well is biting now. He should also now explicitly come out what the strategies or measures he wants to put in place, which are immediate measures, intermediate measures, and long-term measures that we expect. That way we are able to think through and say, our beloved president is doing for us this, and therefore we are able to cope with the current situation and move to the next situation. So resilience is what we need.
Sure. And of course, when we come back, Crispus, we will talk about, we will wrap it up on devolution and what exactly we do expect, because Kenyans are quite key issues, including cost of living and the finance bill that is scheduled for the second reading on Tuesday. And of course, we also be looking at the security challenge. Yesterday, CS Kithure Kindiki was very categorical that the government is hands-on in terms of the security challenges that we have. And we will go back in time. You do remember we had mashifters, but the government was able to deal with them ruthlessly. And now we have another emerging issue of radicalization. We will be discussing that. But first of all, let's go back to Embu Stadium and listen to those songs.
Tuwapongeze kwa makofi tafadhali wananchi. Wimbo wao ujenzi wa taifa. Mike Getone.
Asante sana. Hawa wanajulikana kama Ramogi Cultural Dances. Hapo ndani kuna mzee ambaye mdadisi wangu ananiambia kwamba ana miaka 90. Na ni yeye team leader.
Huyo mzee?
Yes. Mjumbe wa hapa ana miaka ngapi?
Mbunge hapa ni kama 40. Yes.
Ana miaka 90. Mjumbe hapa anaitwa?
Anaitwa Mokonji.
Mokonji.
Yes.
Mokonji, nataka uangalie mzee yako hapo mbele. Huyo mzee ana miaka zaidi ya 90. Kutoka Kogan, Kochia.
Asanteni sana, tuwapongeze kwa makofi, kwa makofi, kwa makofi, kwa makofi. Wanapoondoka tuwapongeze kwa makofi tafadhali. Mike Getone.
Asante sana. Nimepata ujumbe wake ndugu yangu Fanuel ananiambia kwamba wanaitwa Kagan.
Ati wanaitwa
Kochia.
Wanaitwa
Kagan.
Very well, that has been one of the sights and sounds live from Embu. Traditional dance group from Luo Nyanza there, taking their steps there to entertain the crowd as we wait for the chief guest, President William Ruto, who we expect to lead the 60th celebrations of Madaraka Day today. And as soon as he's there, we will be informing you as well. But also here in studio, we are reflecting on the 60 years of independence and some of the challenges and some of also what we've been able to accomplish in that time. I have Dr. Isaac Hassan, I also have Engineer Crispus Wathimba, and also I have Nelson Sechere, who is the Executive Director of Veterans for Peace Kenya, where veterans have been also, we're expecting a lot of veterans there as well, but they are sometimes the unsung heroes. But Engineer, as we wrap up on the matter of devolution and what we expect the president, of course the finance bill is something on a lot of Kenyans' lips, but we also have a number of issues that Kenyans need addressed, and especially when it comes to the high cost of living. I would like you to touch on that.
Well, I just want to touch on the fact that devolution is with us. We are not going to backtrack on that. We are not going to look behind and say, do we go back to a one government kind of administration? So now that we have devolution, we must make it better. We must take stock of the 10 years that we have had devolution. What has gone for us, what has been good for us, and what has been bad for us. That which we have been very bad for us, we expect the president to be very firm and deal with it. That which has been good for us, we want the president to build on that, so that Kenya can take full advantage of the good things that are coming out of devolution. When Kibaki took over in 2003, many people didn't believe that we would have free education, free primary education. But he went and started the program without even enough resources as a country. And today we have benefited fully from free education. Meaning, as a country, it's not that we lack the resources. The challenge is how do we use or maximize the wealth that we have as a country. If we could be able to collect enough of our taxes and make sure
na majeshi ya ulinzi tayari yanajiandaa. Ni amiri jeshi mkuu basi atakuwa na wasili na kufanya sherehe hizi kung'oananga rasmi hapa katika uwanja wa Embu. Tumekuwa tukizungumza na wananchi, tumekuwa tukizungumza na viongozi mbalimbali ambao wamefika hapa katika ukumbi wa maadhimisho ya siku ya Madaraka kutoka kwa
rais. So I hope and pray that this administration will have success stories where somebody who has been found to have stolen public resources is found culpable, is prosecuted, is punished, and those resources taken back to the public so that they can be able to help. So we hope that if this is fought, then when it comes to us asking for more taxes, it will be an easy conversation, because we can be able to trust the government with our resources. But as we are now, even if you put how beautiful these levies will look in terms of what they can deliver, but we don't trust the people who are going to manage the resources, it's going to be very hard conversation. We just pray that the government can be able to be as firm as possible with this fight on corruption. Let us be able to be a country where if you're given a public position, you are satisfied with a small salary as it is. We are satisfied with the powers that you are given, and don't abuse those powers to increase your salary. Because public service does not come with a lot of perks, but it comes with a lot of power. And that power is what is being abused by people to make a lot of money. We've seen an employee of Nairobi City Council who was earning 21,000 shillings, but he used his power as a procurement officer to amass wealth reaching 500 million Kenya shilling. That is where
in less than 10 years, actually.
In less than 10 years. So that's what we're saying. This public office comes with a small pack, but it comes with a lot of power. So when you use this power for your own selfish interest, many Kenyans lose. We have talked about people running for office and spending millions of shillings for a small salary. It's not about the salary they are going to recover their money. It's the power these offices come with. And when those powers are abused, it's Kenyans who suffer. So if he can be very firm in taming how this power is abused by government officials, then as a country we can progress. Kibaki managed to do that. He was surrounded by people who understand where he is going. Kibaki himself never reflected on making himself rich. He entered office and he served the public. I hope the president can continue with the love he has for the country and very firm on those who are around him who are about to steal or are planning to steal.
And still on government, engineer, this, incidentally, we are in the 5th regime and happens to be the biggest government that Kenya has had since independence. I would like you to touch on that, because some people have raised issues, and especially when it comes to the CAS positions. They are saying, we are not doing very well economically, but if we have a bigger government, we will also have avenues for pilferages and wastages in government as well.
Well, you know, we cannot confine Dr. William Ruto to run the government in the same way Kibaki ran it, or with the way Uhuru ran it. He came up with his own plan. So we must also give him room to deliver his mandate the way he wishes. And if the constitution allows him to hire as many people as possible, let him do that. But what we need to hold him account is that we have given you the room to hire all these people. What are they delivering for us? Are they able to bring a return on investment? If you look at Kibaki's administration, he went to the private sector, and private sector expertise was not cheap at that time. And he paid them very well. But what did they deliver? They delivered, at some point, a double-digit growth in the economy. When he was putting resources with these people, he was very sure these people will deliver, and they delivered. We cannot complain about Kibaki's administration. We had enough food for our people. We had enough economic growth at our times. Even after going through 2 referendums and 1 troublesome election, the country still growth was there. But we have seen peace in the last 10 years. We have spent 9 trillion on infrastructure. And we are told this infrastructure will be the stepping stone for our economic growth. But that economic growth did not translate to money in the pocket. So, yes, we had a bloated government with Uhuru Kenyatta. We might have a bloated government with Ruto. But the contrast will be probably with Ruto, he might have a bloated government, but delivering in terms of the value for money for the Kenyan people. Kibaki had a small government, but very expensive because he had to bring expertise, but he delivered for the people. So let's allow William Ruto to run his government as he wishes, so that in 5 years' time, we'll tell him, we gave you the mandate, we gave you the room to deliver as you wish, where are the results? But if we still control him and tell him you must do your government as Uhuru Kenyatta was doing, then you are not giving him the powers to deliver as the president.
Let me pick from where engineer has left it, because he's saying, yes, indeed, maybe we may have a lean government, but not deliver. We might have a bloated one, but give it a chance. Nelson, looking at the government as it is, some people have talked about President William Ruto has the best opportunity to become the best president ever. Reason being, he has been in 4 regimes. He was with Moi, he was in Kibaki's government, he was a deputy president for 10 years, and now he is the head of state. So he has had around 20 years of being in government in one way or the other. So he is best suited for this job. I'd like you to comment on that.
Yes, I think, in my opinion, President William Ruto has the best chance to be a president that will be remembered for long. Before President William Ruto, we were remembering about Kibaki, because Kibaki made a lot of impact with very little that was there. The only setback that probably President William Ruto is going to suffer is from the surrounding of people around him. Because he's a very brilliant man from where I sit. He is very outspoken, he knows what he needs, but there are so many hindrances that comes in. And I wouldn't want him to be lured into the temptation of what other presidents have gone through from political rewarding that is now going on. I would think that from where he is now, he has nothing to lose by making drastic measures. He has no baggage with him, unlike the former president. Probably he had some people to be very careful about as you are dealing with them. For him, he can do, and I'm very happy with what he did with the previous, recently with the issue of sugar. He basically made sure that all the heads dropped from top to bottom. That is what should be done in equal measure. And that is what was expected from him. He will also want to prioritize on key economic areas. For example, infrastructure. In any economic setup that is going to grow, energy is a very key drive for economic development. There has to be as many incentives towards the energy sector. If he has to promote manufacturing, then the initial stage will be to enhance the power availability to the people. And he has nothing to lose by being tough. That is what I expected from today when he's going to address the Kenyans. He should tell us, look, I'm here, you voted for me. There could be some contests here and there. There could be some people not very happy with the situation, but this is where we are. I'm the President of the Republic of Kenya. Trust me, I will deal this for you. Because, to be honest, if you are given this power today for 2 days, there are things you are going to make. Some obvious decisions. There are things that you must do differently. And don't dwell so much on celebration, because that is what has failed many countries. Because it's a small achievement, you want to dwell on that as an achievement. And also, I expect that today when he's going to address us, and even his people and the leaders who are there, they won't give promises, because now the time for promises ended by election. There shouldn't be an advantage of saying, okay, now we have planned. Now it's time of doing it, because now he's already there. There is every reason why he has to do what he has to do. And we appreciate the fact that he is really acknowledging the rule of law. He is going so much, even if you look at what is happening in the opposition, he is really giving room for some kind of discussion. Like, I know I'm the president, but look, let me hear. They say the majority have the say, but the minority need to have, they may not have their say, but the majority have their way. It is very important for us to listen to every Kenyan. And listening from what I've seen the cabinet doing, I would commend the president, because I'm seeing very few ministers speak in public. That is very good. It's a deviation from the past. I have not seen ministers coming out and telling us things every day. I'm seeing more of people being quiet. You know, there are ministers, we don't even know what is happening with the ministries, but there are things going on. And that's very good. And I think that should be a spirit that we must encourage to the entire cabinet. Finally, the issue of being a president must never be forgotten, that a president is a state symbol, is a unity, is a symbol of unity. There is no president for opposition or government, Kenya Kwanza or Azimio. The president of Kenya is a symbol of national unity. And as such, I'm sure that the veterans who came before us, those who brought us the independence, they envisage that one day we'll be having our own self-rule. Self-rule means we are happy with ourselves. Whatever the mud that we have is our own. And he must firmly state that he's supporting peace within this period. And of course, we've not seen much different from what he's saying. Finally, and not the least, we also want him to be tough on corruption. Pronounce himself deliberately that this is not what I would want to hear from my government. Because being a head of state, you are the commander-in-chief. The head stops with you. You may want to blame a minister or the other, but eventually you will say, under my tenure, this is what happened or did not happen. So I think he has the best chance to do something different from the rest of the presidents.
Doc, I would like you also to weigh in on the issue of his government. And it's a good thing that Nelson has reminded us that this is the government, the first government that a sitting CS will have his day in parliament and also address Kenyans on exactly what he or she is doing. Still on the same, you saw how the president cracked the whip on the health PS and also on KEMSA, more or less showing that he is more than committed. Yes, indeed, the government is more than about 9 months old now, but we have seen some tremendous steps that the president has taken in matters accountability.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, President Ruto, from the onset of his occupation of the highest office, he set a very clear rules, whereby I'll give you the job, you make sure that you deliver as per the requirement of that job. And when one of his officers in the Ministry of Health failed to do his work or her work, then he reacted, and the reaction was very well, and it was welcomed. It was welcomed by all Kenyans, and people viewed him as someone who is a no-nonsense, who doesn't want to have any corruption within his country. But as my brother has put it very well, the blueprint of his deliverables are anchored on his manifesto. So we don't need now to talk about issues of we'll do this or we'll do this. We already know what you promised to do. We know in political campaign times, promises are made, huge promises are made, but government operates differently. Government operates based on budgets that are already forecast, and therefore, and the fact that he was not, the sitting president, or the fact that being the deputy, but he was not given the privilege to be part of the system at that particular time, he did not budget for his promises. And quite often Kenyans think that when the president promises things, all of a sudden, very early in the morning, once he is sworn in the office, he will start delivering. The government don't operate that way. Government has a focus, and budgeting is always, based on previous years. He may be responding to budgets that has already been established by the other government, the previous government.
Apologies, Dr. But as you can see on your screen, is that that is the official ceremonial car or vehicle that the head of state is expected to use, and you can see that the soldiers there are on standby, meaning that their commander-in-chief is not quite far, and any moment now we might see signs of the head of state arriving at the Embu Stadium. But for now, the entertainment continues, and we also here in live studio continue to reflect on some of the gains and some of the steps that we have made in the 60 years that we have been independent, and what we also can do better, because we also need to put things and issues into perspective. Continue with your statement.
Right, definitely that's the ceremonial car.
Yes,
and we love it whenever we see it during national function days.
Sure.
Now, it is time to deliver with a clear roadmap. And the clear roadmap the president has put in place is by putting the right people in the right place, first and foremost, because it's not him who will go to deliver. It's those people he has engaged. And if he has bloated his government, for example, adding more human resource to make sure that he delivers his promises, I think, as my colleagues have already put it, I think it is one way that we should give them a freedom. I know opposition will want to shoot him down so that he fails in what he wants, he is expected to do, so that they tell the public that, you see, you have elected a president and he has not delivered what he was expected to deliver. And that's a mentality of people who are not thinking of being nationalist, or people who are not patriotic, because services are for the citizens of this country. It has nothing to do with the leadership of the country. The leadership of the country only ensures or guide that those services are delivered to the citizen of the country. So one thing that perhaps I will expect him to now put a lot of weight on is, of course, he should look for a way of preventing wastages in his government, because that is one thing that is killing us. A governor, for example, let me go to my governor in Mandera. He has no threat, he has nothing. He wants to come to my village in Takaba, and he uses 28-30 vehicles to come there, and all those vehicles plus all the personnel who are in those vehicles are paid by the exchequer. I don't see why we should need such a wastage. That's a wastage. Yes. He uses his car and two of security cars.
I see also the Attorney General has also arrived. Justin Bidan Muturi is, of course, he hails from the same county. He is also being welcomed into the stadium, meaning that the creme de la creme that we are expecting, the top leadership of the head of state, any moment from now, and as you can see, the security personnel are on standby, meaning that it's only a matter of time before we see the head of state, who we are eagerly awaiting for. Doc?
Right, thank you. So once the wastages are prevented, I think we will be able to keep more cash or more resources into our coffer for purpose of using those resources for other development or other services. Secondly, as we all spoke about it, corruption.
Correct. Also the Chief Justice and the President of the Supreme Court, the Chair of the National Council on Administration of Justice, Chief Justice Martha Koome, is also in attendance. We are almost there, right?
Right, I can see the high dignitaries, the three arms of the government. Now it's only the executive.
The executive that we are waiting for.
Yeah, that we are waiting for.
Yeah.
We already have the speakers of the National Assemblies. We already have also the judiciary, the Chief Justice, and definitely the President now to follow.
And also the Council of Governors.
Council of Governors, of course,
Chair of the Council of Governors.
Yeah, but we have been taught the three arms of the government.
Yes.
And now the county governments are not part of the three arms of the government according to the teachings that we have been given. So if I talked about wastage prevention, then secondly, we have talked about corruption. That must be also completely zero tolerance. Thirdly, he must come up with a strategic priority of his manifesto, saying, with this roadmap, we will going to do this and this other phase, as I promised, we will do this in the next 5 years. Once we get that information on our public domain, then people expectation will be controlled, because they know government don't operate just like a private entity, and therefore everything will be based on focus, and the roadmap they will give us is the one which will going to guide us, and we will be will measure the performance of the government of the President William Ruto based on the roadmap he has given us, based on the priorities that he has set.
All right.
Finally,
apologies.
Finally, I mean, you don't just do all that without goodwill. So we must have a goodwill from his troops, people who really are dedicated and committed to deliver the presidential pledges, and based on the roadmap they have set, they are able to say, this is what we are expected to do, and for us to help the president to deliver his pledges, we must have the goodwill and ensure that every other steps that they take is geared towards delivering what is in the manifesto and the strategic priority that has been set. Therefore, communicating that information to the public domain is also one critical thing. Otherwise, when we are in the darkness, then it gives us a question of asking a lot of what is happening, what is going on, what was he supposed to do, we don't understand what is going on, you know. And then the oppositions are loud in terms of underscoring the government's performance. If you are not able to tell them that this is what they were expected to do, and everything is at a gray area, then the opposition will going to have an upper hand in terms of poisoning the public on issues of negativity in terms of the performance of the government.
All right. Engineer, looking at our country, some have argued that Kenya is always a politicking country, and our elections do not quite represent what a democracy like Kenya, being one of the biggest democracies in East and Central Africa, we are always in politics, and after every election we have to have an issue. I think the only one that we never had any petitions or any of the sharing of anything was in 2003, I think. Yes, and now we have bipartisan talks. Let's talk some politics. And the bipartisan talks don't seem to be yielding any fruits yet. Hardline stance that have caused the two sides actually to suspend the talks indefinitely. But unfortunately, we cannot ignore politics in a free country like Kenya. I'd like you to touch on that.
Well, just before I touch on politics, I just also want to comment on what my colleague said, that it's good for the ministers are a bit quiet. But I also feel like if as much as they're quiet, they need to be seen to be responsible. If you are on the social media handles, you can see there's talk of this opulence that some of these ministers are being associated with, wearing expensive watches, expensive shoes, some watches worth 5 months' salary of a cabinet secretary. That sends a very wrong message. We've seen some of the CSs who are being appointed exposing their expensive cars. That's a sign that money is being misused. So as much as they may not talk much, but as long as we are perceiving them to be misusing the public wealth, that's a very bad thing. So I think he needs to be very firm with the people around him. We have seen he has lost weight. He did not lose weight because he's just sitting there. It's because he's working hard. Yes. And probably he's carrying the whole country alone. Probably the people around him are not carrying the same weight as he's carrying. So therefore, we don't want him to surround himself with a lot of weight that is not necessary. Let him surround himself with people, men and women, who can drive this country. Kibaki was seated in State House, but we knew the country was safe because the people he surrounded himself with, they were able to govern. When Uhuru Kenyatta took over, probably we can see things were a bit different. He surrounded himself with men, he gave them the freedom, but probably where they took that freedom is where we have today. We have a very huge debt as a country and very little to show for it. We don't want Ruto to carry the whole country on himself because he's surrounded by people around him who are not able to help him drive this country. As far as politics is concerned, I feel like our politics is still has not yet matured. Because if you look at the opposition we still have is the one that we had 30 years ago. We haven't changed in terms of the character and formation of the opposition. We still have the Orengos of this world, the Mother Karuas, the Raila Amolo Odinga. We haven't changed the character or the crop of leaders that are either in the opposition. We want to see more of young people coming up and taking leadership in terms of both in government and in the opposition, so that the conversation that is there can also be different. That's the only way we can see our democracy is moving forward. But as long as we still have the same characters over 30 years discussing politics, then that's a challenge for us. I don't feel like we're able to progress.
All right. And Nelson, a recognition of heroes and heroines who fought and continue to fight for justice, equality, and a better life for Kenyans, including those who are doing it right now. This is something that we need to step up, because we have some of the heroes and heroines as we speak, and we have seen how we have treated our heroes and heroines in the past, and especially those who fought for, one, the independence of Kenya, and two, for the multi-partyism in the 90s. I'd like to touch on that.
Yeah, we have so many heroes and heroines who have contributed to this country immensely. Unfortunately, we are a country that only appreciates people in their death, not when they're alive. You saw the late wife of Dedan being buried the other day, Mukami.
Yes.
You could see the opulence, the people
pomp,
coming,
the color, and the budget as well.
We really like, she fought, the husband was there. But before then, you and me knows, we don't know where she was. We don't know where she was like a year ago, 2 years ago. We know she was around. Yes. We have an idea there was some widow somewhere doing something. But we should have not only the monuments, calling the roads by Kimathi Street, Moy Avenue, the families of these people who have fought for the country, they do not enjoy the lifestyle of what they should enjoy. In the US, for example, a veteran, when somebody who has